WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively linking people together today. Friends of friends of friends. I don't know, about a year ago, my dear friend Bill Cole and I'm drinking some Rofo coffee, a little Kona blend out of the Cole Roofing mug here. Introduced me to a bunch of friends of his in a circle, and they do a podcast and talk about Baltimore and making Baltimore better. And anybody who wants to make Baltimore better, David Noel, you know I'm all about that. David Noel is the president and CEO of MOI. I thought it was moi, probably because I thought I was going to Paris when I was over at his place. His place is right in front of where I do a lot of my shopping and where I now put on my own PPE and get my gloves and my mask together right out in front of MOI. And there's a new courtyard down there in McHenry Row. David Noel is a shareholder at MOI. I called it moi, but it's actually Maryland Office Interiors, and MOII is the website. David, we're all kind of shut down here, man, doing the first off, good day to you. I didn't think the first time I'd have you on my show would be because we're pandemicked and isolated and quarantined and all that stuff, but it is good having you on. You know, I was doing Baltimore Positive last year, and you were a guy I wanted to have on anyway. So we can say we met at the bottom en route to the top. How about that?
That sounds good, and good morning. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for being a voice of positivity.
Well, it's not always positive, right? I mean, it's positive when Larry Hogan's bringing in, PPP, and his wife is South Korean, and my wife and I were in South Korea. We came back from Asia. We think we have had the virus. My wife spent a month in bed in January, undetectable flu, missed the Super Bowl, missed the Lamar Jackson Titans game. And we'd love to get tested, right? You know, like my wife's a 2-time cancer survivor. She's diabetic. She's completely isolated and sequestered because if she got it, the feeling would be she would have a harder time surviving it than, let's say, I would. But we think she's had it, and now these tests come to the state. And it really is amazing in this week how somewhere the blue, I'm wearing my blue jacket today, not just because I'm wearing blue, because I was a Colts fan, Dave. and, there's blue hats and red hats, and now Hogan finds himself in the middle of the president beating him down, right, which is what you do in a pandemic, just beat everybody up when you're a bully. And, our state has been sort of a model on how to get this done. We're at 1/6 at the beginning of the week of the deaths, diagnosis, all the stuff that's going on in New York and Boston and other places that have had a harder time dealing with this. Our governor has been a Republican and somehow a rational, very, very rational Republican, and very independently got stuff done this week, and has now, he on Monday night and Tuesday making the news, making the rounds, defending our honor. I'm proud of Maryland. I'm proud of the Free State. Matter of fact, I got to fly me a Maryland flag behind me before it's all over with. But this has been an interesting case. Politics, people, resources, concern, science. Man, this TV reality show's had it all since the last time you and I got together, right?
Yeah, this is crazy. And if you look at what Hogan's doing from my perspective and everything that you try to do when you're running a business, the leadership that he is demonstrating, which may not always be politically correct or, in line with party, policies or whatever it may be. As a leader, I would say, regardless of your affiliations, the guy is rocking it, doing an unbelievable job, and you just wish you could see that in more places.
Well, in your case, give me your story, because I can go on your LinkedIn and see that you're 2 decades into Maryland Office Interiors and MOI. You can go to MOII. I went down to your space a year ago. We had a little summit with some dear friends that we share you and I have 87 mutual connections on LinkedIn, right? So, you are 1 mile away from me every time I go and get eggnog or pick up anything at the store or, pick up some baklava around the corner from you or whatnot. We're within 100 feet of each other in a city. And we're all trying to hold this thing together, and there's essential businesses. I mean, I have an FCC license. Like, I'm allowed to drive around and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't, and I think there's part of broadcasting now and part of staying home and part of where you're wearing your mask and where you're not. And meanwhile, you have all these employees, and you had really kind of an open different kind of an environment in your place where a guy like you said to me, hey, if your wife and your cat are too loud at the house or you just want a different view, we have these incredible workspaces that we've created to get you out. And now everyone's workspace is turned into their spare office somehow in the last 6 weeks, right?
Well, yeah. So it's interesting because you just hit on about 20 topics, but I'll try to zone in on the business side. So, yeah, we're in the business of actually helping people put furnishings and solutions into their space to make it useful. And the concept, beginning of the year and actually for the last several years was, hey, open creativity, people close together. The average square foot allocation per employee dropped down to about 125 square feet per person. It was good in real estate costs, yada, yada, yada.
We wanted to crowd people together. As a society, we think bringing people close. That's what the whole design of a city would say that, right? That's the whole idea of New York, is that good stuff comes out of New York because lots of people are together, right?
Absolutely. And now, our showrooms are obviously shut down. We do have some essential contract work going we do a lot of work with the federal government, but for the most part, I'd say we're probably 70% operational at this point, but there are still people thinking about space and people who've made commitments, and there are design efforts going on, and the question really is, well, what now? And there's been a lot of dialogue. I spend a lot of time every day looking at the next webcast with what I call the next level of experts, and it's funny, in pandemics, everybody becomes an expert very quickly. And I'm listening.
I became a toilet paper expert a couple weeks ago.
Oh, well, I'll have to get some your white paper on that a little bit later.
Well, you go 3 tries, get there early in the morning. We've all had to find a mask. We've all had to make a scarf. I mean, we've all had to become amateur chefs in our homes, right? If we're going to eat 3 times a day, right?
Yeah. Well, life does revolve around what the next meal is. So, I'm listening to experts and I'm watching the industry, both designers and our own teams, try to react to, well, what now? How will we adapt our own space? How will we adapt, how will design evolve as a result of this, both in the short term and in the long term? And you start looking at the kinds of solutions, you start thinking about, well, if there is a point in time when we do open up, like how do we actually create an environment, pre-vaccine, if you will, if that's the end-all be-all to making this one go away, how do you create an environment where your people will feel safe coming together? And I'm not talking about a stadium. I'm talking about, an office that has 50 people in it.
You know what's amazing, man? I'm on your website, and it's just like it's going through, and you create these beautiful spaces, and all of them have like tables where we gather, right? I mean, or couches we want to sit on together, not cubicles that are 2 meters or more apart, right? And I can't think of anything that's going to psychologically change the rest of our lives quite like what this period of time has done. My wife and I walked to get Indian food up Charles Street, up to Lumbini the other day, and just how everyone on the street, and we only passed 12 people, going 6 blocks at 5 o'clock on a Sunday night, right? We passed 12 people, how all of us looked at each other in some sort of criminal way and said, stay as far away from me. You're going to walk on that side of the street, and I'm going to walk on this. And it wasn't like a black-white thing, an age thing. I thought we didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel like anybody had a gun. I didn't feel like anybody, there was none of that. There was just simply the threat of you breathing too close to me, right? That's 6 weeks into this. And Dave, that's the only human interaction I've had this week. I've been a good boy. I've stayed home. I haven't, other than Zooming, right? The only human interaction I have is how far can I stay away from you when I cross the street to go look at the ducks every couple of days, literally, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. And, it's like you don't even, it's like, does anybody really know? You go from 2 million, what could be 2 million deaths in the U.S. to whatever it is right now, 40 or 60 and counting. And you wonder where
it's still 2 million, man. They're open in Georgia and Florida. Come on now.
That's true.
Anybody that wants to count the bodies right now, and, it's like counting the Orioles' losses in May. There'll be more. You know what I mean? Like, literally.
Yeah, I'm not missing baseball for that. But at any rate, I mean, I think it's really hard to figure out what is the new normal. I kind of processed this whole thing, and I've been, in my mind, I'm kind of an analytic. My background is all financial, and so I kind of looked at it and said, when it first happened, kind of like, what are the immediate things? How do you process this immediately for yourself, for your family, for business? And then and that was kind of the mad rush of it. So, we just got we ran into a fire and here it is, and we never thought it would be here. And you go through shock and denial.
Well, the amazing thing is
anger.
if the brains of America lit up on a map that weekend, how much thinking was going on for all of us, not just about toilet paper. And I say that with a laugh 5 or 6 weeks later, and not really with a laugh at all, but just the thoughts that have gone through all of our minds. But the initial thoughts was fire, fire, fire for everyone, literally. And I think that first weekend when I saw restaurants who had never carried out before but had really successful restaurants, that those people were trying to, on a weekend, become a drive-through in a way they had never thought about it. It's an incredible thing for creative people and anyone that's built anything, because anybody that's ever built anything, no matter how successful it was, over the last 6 weeks, you've had to rebuild it, at least in your mind, even if you can't make it happen, right?
So you get past that initial shock and awe, if you will. And I think we're not, I don't know whether we're there. I don't know how to define this on a map. And then you get to the next phase of it, which is the one we're entering into, which is, in my mind, it's something between until there's a vaccine, there's this period of time where we have to figure out how to be safe, and we can't be locked down for a year at a time. And how do you do that without making it worse? And so there's this interim period that we're trying to figure out how to navigate. And ultimately, what it comes down to in the end is that I don't know what the new normal is, but the new normal can't even really begin, because I don't think planning for this interim phase is not going to be forever. So I think the plan is for what is the impact of this psychologically and factually on business society after it feels like we've got a vaccine and it is safe to potentially reconnect, and ultimately that day will come. I have no idea when that day will come, but that day will come, and how much damage has been done along the way in this interim period. All those questions begin to lay in. And I think what happens is, from bringing it back into a business context, there's experts and people talking about, well, what do you do now? And they're talking about putting screens up and creating greater separation. But I want think about the logistics of having people come into a space and what they're touching. And even if you create walls and you put distance between people,
you're better off doing it on Zoom at this point. We're all getting better at Zoom, right? Literally, for having a meeting, literally for me to get in the car, go do all of that, to stand 6.5 feet away from you. What's the point, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, there's a lot of, I sit on a couple of day discussions around how we're going to redesign space, and we have clients asking us that question, and now we have new projects coming into play, and you wonder, what are those people thinking, because their project may not be actually built until next year, and how are they going to think about this? And for me, I'm kind of still in the studying mode on this. I don't know. I'm not convinced that, I am convinced putting up a 48-inch high screen is not going to protect me from the person that's, sitting even 6 feet away from me. I was watching this morning, I think I've seen this a couple times, basically the trajectory of a sneeze and how quickly it dissipates and how far it goes. Unless you're living in a spacesuit, forget it. There is no safety in this, and you can limit the number of people and put masks on and all those kinds of things and wash your hands 27 times a day. But in terms of getting back to any kind of new normal, it's not going to happen until you either hit the herd immunity thing or you get to this vaccine. And for me, it's really a question of, well, what happens in between? Because I don't, God bless us, I hope we have a lot of smart people trying to figure this out, and it's not going to take 4 years to create these vaccines or even some, medication to limit the impact of this. But to your earlier point, you almost feel like if you're in good health, you'd rather get it, and if in fact that prevents you from getting it again, be able to move on with your life.
David Noel is joining us here. He is MOI. I called it moi, but we're all together here. Maryland Office Interiors, MOII.com is the way to find him. He is the president and CEO. He's a Baltimore guy. And give your background a little bit for folks who don't know you, because, I haven't gotten to know you well, but you're in the neighborhood, and you're one of those many, many, many people I have that's sort of an arm reach away. And I'll just say this about where I'm sitting right now, and my wife, and I know I told you this a couple years ago before I knew you. I was really having problems with my chair in my office. I sit in this chair all day long, and I found this chair, and I went into an office space. It was not your office space, but I sat in 100 different chairs and picked this chair after taking an hour to literally roll around in chairs, and my wife did the same thing. And we're here. It's been about maybe 3 years, 3.5 years, because after my wife survived the second time, she was working, and we had the new normal before the COVID, right? Like, we were the couple who were never home 5, 6, 7 years ago. Well, 7 years ago, before my wife had cancer. She worked in her place. I worked in my place. I felt like I needed to be in my place. I employed a lot of people. You want to be there, all of that stuff. And then she got cancer the first time. The second time, she got home work because her office went away up in Hunt Valley, and McCormick bought the Verizon space. And she's been working from home for about 4.5 years. And we learned quickly that, like, the space we work in, the chair we sit in, that the height of the chair and the desk and the ergo at 52, and I've had knee surgery and thrown my back out and all that stuff, that where you work, and this is such a science, really, for a guy like you and your background and all of this. But I just want to let everybody know that, like, I am a huge fan of what you do and what anyone does, and especially in the new world where we're all sitting in one space, usually at home, that you can make their life better. I mean, it made my life a lot better to sit in this chair to write my next book than I did the last book.
That was a great pitch. I might actually need to hire you in my sales team.
Well, I am wearing a sport coat. I did dress. I mean, my hair's a little long right now if you want to go with the 80s look. But, yeah, there you go. MOI, it's for you.
Yeah, thanks. No, look, I'm not. I come from. I'm a Baltimore-bred person. Went to the University of Maryland. Grew up in Pikesville, and I was a finance person, a CPA for 10 years, and wanted to get out of that gig. And
that sounds exciting, CPA. Give everyone a little background on what that looks like.
Yeah, you're learning a lot about. I use it as a tool to learn a lot about business. My father was an accountant that kind of ran the apple didn't fall far from the tree. And I used it as a way just to understand business. And then I had an opportunity to come into MOI when it was a much smaller organization. And I kind of learned the business from the numbers out. I'll give you a quick story, but, I was an introvert. I'm introverted naturally. And I'm the guy kind of running accounting and then running customer service and operations. And all of a sudden they come to you one day and they say, hey, we need you to go down and make a pitch. Legg Mason's doing a new project in their tower, and they want to understand how you guys actually, make the sausage work. How does this actually work? And I look at it and say, like I'm not a sales guy. Like, that's, no, you'll be good. Just come down. Just talk about what you do.
Just explain it to them. That's right. If you explain it to them, you're selling it, right? Like, literally.
There you go. And so I go out and, I just talk about what we do. And the next thing you know, we land the project. And you then become, overnight, you're a salesperson. You've got instantaneous street cred inside the organization. And, and you've kind of also, you build a level of confidence that maybe you didn't have. And the next thing you know, your partners are ready to retire and they hand you the baton and you're kind of like, well, now what do I do? And you figure it out. You take it one day at a time. And, I don't necessarily know that I always know the exact path, but I'm pretty good at figuring it out along the way. I like, quote, building the bridge as you walk across it. And that's exactly what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to build a bridge as we walk across it. Things evolve. The thoughts we had a year ago or, about what we're doing are obviously going to be impacted by all of this. And, we're connecting. We're a relationship-based organization. We ask a lot of questions. We got a lot of smart people that know how to bring together the right kinds of solutions based on what we're hearing. But I think for every business right now, it's really hard to know what exactly, are you even going to be here a year from now? Can you survive this? Are you going to be able to navigate the choppy waters of whatever length of time this goes on? And then what if you do, what is the psyche and what are the trends and how are you going to want to utilize your space? So look, I used to think years and years ago I'd sit in this seat and I'd be able to kick back and have a cup of coffee and read the Wall Street Journal and relax. And I got to tell you, I'm working harder now than I probably ever have and probably will be now for the next, 5 years, trying to figure out what's next in this. But I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and I like learning. And I'm pretty honest about knowing that I don't know everything, so I'm okay with that.
David Noel is here. He is president CEO of MOI, not moi, Maryland Office Interiors. MOII.com is the way to find them. I guess for all of us in learning and figuring things out at this point, and you say building the bridge, I always say building the plane while I'm flying it. And then once you fly it, you got to figure out how to land it, right? And I've been doing that with AM radio and the web in Baltimore. I want to talk to you more about Baltimore and get more specific and drill down a little bit, because Baltimore is what brought you and I together. It was part of a conversation we had a year ago about elections and Baltimore Positive. And, hey, I know this dude doing Baltimore Positive, and he's got Don Moeller, and maybe you should be a guy on the show, or maybe he needs a more comfortable chair for him or his wife, or maybe he needs a new set for his television show, which all these things bring a guy like you and me together. But the thing I think that brings us together is Baltimore, and I know you had a tragedy or, certainly something awful that happened inside of your company. I live downtown. I hear and see awful things happening all the time. And it has been a fascinating case study in 6 weeks with COVID about how quiet the streets have been, how no one's out, no one's around. We have this murder number we're tied to. We have an election that's been moved back 6 weeks. I literally just filled out my special election, my congressional election this morning, about 20 minutes before I did this with you. And we're now voting by mail. We have a city where we have 5 or 6 mayor candidates who will all be here at Baltimore Positive and NST before it's all over with. We've had all of them on. We'll have them all on again, including Jack Young, who we have not had on, and Larry Hogan, who's been too busy to come on. But we're at a real place in the world where everyone is paying attention to politicians in a way, and politicians are getting a lot of noise because we're not watching baseball, even though Cal Ripken was on this week. And yeah, we'll be into the draft for a couple days this week, and then that's going to go away. And as I'm saying to everyone, I'll be shocked if they play football this year. So I'll play along and, get into the movie of drafting football players, but I don't necessarily think it's real, like you don't think it's real, until we have a vaccine. We have herd immunity, all these things scientifically we need to know. But science, education, politics, local, Annapolis, Baltimore, Hopkins, hospitals, schools, education, all of this has bubbled up over the last 5 or 6 weeks. And more than that, for me, and I know I met you under some strange circumstances a year ago, I really believe when all this is over with, we're going to come back to truth and trust and transparency. And is what you're telling me, Governor of Georgia, true? Or are you just making that up when my uncle dies on the farm next month? There's a lot of that going on right now. And over the next 90 days, and I think over the next 6 months as we get up on the election, all of these press conferences at 6 o'clock every night that come out of D.C., and all of these press conferences that come from City Hall or from Annapolis, people are paying attention, and I believe more people are going to want to vote than ever. Maybe that's me being naive and thinking the young kids will catch on, but I think all of us have seen the power of government, whether it's me getting screwed by Wells Fargo and the PPP, or whether it's a friend of mine getting a check and getting bailed out, or whether it's me getting $1,200 or not, or whether I could file for unemployment, which I've never done in my life and still haven't done, or I wouldn't even know how to do it. But a lot of people are facing all of that for the first time, and whether they're turning to spirituality, religion, their financial advisor, or, hey, who's running this place, and how did that guy get in charge, and what's that woman stand for? And I think there's more of that going on because we all have time, and unless we're binge watching the first season of The Wire, which I've never done, we're paying attention to stuff in a different way, and this is certainly going to change all of our reaction to what the government is, what a hospital is, what my insurance is, what the education my kids are getting. And I think we're thinking about that differently as a society, and I think we're going to be thinking about that more. Even the idiots who showed up in red hats with the machine guns down in Annapolis the other day.
Yeah, I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I think when you look at the city of Baltimore and the trouble that it's had pre this and now with this, and look, we moved our place back down to the city to invest in the city and to bring, I think the city is important, obviously, to the state of Maryland.
Give me that story.
And
When did you do that? Because I'm always interested when people come to Baltimore. How, when, why, and the psychology of that.
Yeah, so we actually, believe it or not, before I was involved with it, our company was literally where Camden Yards was, and we had to move to make room for that project. And so the company moved from the city back out to the county and was out in the county for a number of years, over 20. And we had just outlived the useful life of a building that we were in, and we needed to start looking for where do we go. And we wanted to, we looked at a lot of places, you look at all the extremes, but ultimately we said, we started in the city, we believe in the city. Geographically, the city is where activity is and where influencers are and where the people that we do business with are. And so, we met with Mark Saperstein and found the space that we're in, which is ideally, it's perfectly designed for exactly what we do. And we really made the commitment. McHenry Row is an absolute wonderful location and a lot of amenities coming from the county where you had to get in a car to get something to eat. Now you can walk and there's a food store and all the rest of that stuff. And we really wanted to, it's increased our ability to connect with the influencers that we work with, the brokers and the project managers and the general contractors and designers. It's a way for us to kind of say, look, we're invested in the city. We want to see the city be successful. It's frustrating to watch what goes on within the city. And you go back to, if there isn't different thinking, then the results will just continue to replicate. And that is frustrating. And you need a fresh perspective and someone who's bold and someone who's willing to take a chance and have the city believe in them, because of the dynamics of just how the democratic nature and how votes go. It doesn't take tremendous numbers to get the person who's going to be sitting in the mayor's seat to be there. It's a little different than a national election. And so but you hope that that enough reason can permeate the voters, and you can see that maybe we need to try to do something different here to try to get a different result.
David Noel is here. He's the president and CEO of MOI. That's Maryland Office Interiors, and MOII.com is the way to find him. First-time visitor here to Baltimore Positive. I've been trying to find ways to bring more people in, and I guess through this period of time, any advice or any sort of life experience thing that now you didn't know 6 weeks ago, and then I'm going to ask a story. I always say Moeller asked if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? But the question now is, who would you hug? Who are you going to hug when this is all over with? Because I haven't seen my kid in 6 weeks. Most people haven't seen their kid or their grandkid unless they live with them. This has been a strange thing from a human level of not being able to touch people, right? I think that's the psychology of this has been the hardest thing that I wouldn't have expected in January about what this is going to mean for all of us and all of our time alone and how it's going to change all of us. Nobody's coming out of this the same way 6 months from now.
Yeah. So I got two easy answers to the hug thing because during this chaos, my daughter gave birth to our first grandchild, Olivia.
Wow.
And so we got a little bit of a quick connection with her when she was first born, but it was very brief. And obviously we've been living through FaceTime, and I can't wait to actually be able to spend more time so she actually knows who her favorite grandfather is. And then beyond that, it's really hard if you think about it. I've got a 92-year-old mom, and I go over there, but we're keeping our distance, and she's somewhat isolated. She's not in a senior living. She's in an apartment with full-time help, but it's hard for seniors. My wife's parents both live in a community, and it's basically on almost the equivalent of lockdown. So
my mom died 2 years ago, 98 years old, and my wife and I say, I have no idea how we would do this. You know what I mean? Like how difficult this would be.
Really hard, especially when you think about how much technology you need to survive right now and how technology may not be natural for, at least for my mom. My mom, it's not. So I think the lessons are, man, there's a million of them. I'm sitting here trying to process all of that. From a business perspective, it is, you try to communicate openly and honestly and frequently. Look, I've had to make some tough decisions, and people will probably never understand some of them. And, I may not necessarily have 100 friends when it's all said and done. But, you have to kind of, your job sitting in my seat is really to figure out not only how to navigate this, how to survive, and how to be in a position when it settles to be able to thrive. And there are hard decisions that come along with that. And I didn't sign up saying, ooh, me, let me be the person to make this tough decision. But they land on your doorstep and you have to make them. But we've been doing creative things to communicate both formally from a company perspective, informally. Our marketing team is putting together, like kids things for lunchtime so that they can occupy the kids of our employees. We had a pet happy hour. We've done other Zoom things and whatnot. So that's interesting. And I think personally it's, look, I still need my own personal time. I could get lost in this for 12 to 14 hours a day. I'm a diehard Peloton guy, so I got to get on that bike for a little bit just to get my mindset cleared.
I built a yoga space in here for the same thing, right? Like taking care of yourself during this. We had Patty Moeller on. You can find that out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault or at Baltimore Positive, and just talking about taking care of yourself, being good to yourself. That it's hard for guys like us when we want to have, results every day, right? You know what I mean? We want to grow. We want to, and some of the growth is going to be internal and not really measurable on a sheet of paper. It's going to be a little intangible here the last 6 weeks. Certainly feels that way for me.
Yeah, it is definitely a grueling mental process, and especially when you don't know how long. I always say I can endure anything if I know when the end of it is, and this one's really hard because you just don't know what is the end, and so you
have to accept that, right? You have to accept that the uncertainty of it. I mean, we all want certainty; it's a human thing, right? But the uncertainty of this, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's fun like a roller coaster because the roller coasters are going to stay on the track. This is clearly every night when this guy gets up in front of America, I wonder who's conducting the orchestra, and that is a frightening concept unto itself, right?
Yeah, look, here's the mentality that carries you through it. It's kind of like keep calm. We're one day closer. Every day you navigate. You're one day closer to whatever that end is, and in some ways that's kind of the mentality. You just have to take it one day at a time because you don't have all the answers, and that can be hard. We all have our moments, and you just have to kind of wipe yourself off and get back up and get back in the saddle and do what you got to do.
Dave, I tell you, I'm going to wrap it up right here on this because you just said something that's on the screen. You said we got to keep calm, and I've had literally this up: keep calm, stay local, and Baltimore Positive. I'm trying to do that. David Noel is our guest, President and CEO of MOI, Maryland Office Interiors. Anything you want to say about your company right now, or finding you, or if my chair broke right now, what the heck I could do? Literally, right?
Yeah, look, we're still around. We're going to be strong through this. We're based in Baltimore. We've got places in Washington and Richmond and Virginia Beach. We're here for you. The website's www.moii.com, and we would love to help you think about what's next. We may not have all the answers, but we're pretty good at trying to work together with others and figure out what's the right way to go forward. So.
I'm sorry I haven't elbow bumped you lately. This is one of those things with my wife. I keep going back to this New York story. My wife and I went to New York back in February when she started to feel a little better, and we went up to see the Eagles, but we didn't. We ate our faces off and went everywhere, but we didn't eat everywhere we wanted to go. We didn't go to our favorite bakery because it was like too much of a hassle in the morning to get on the subway and go, like literally all those things. We didn't go see Hall & Oates, and we thought, we'll go see them in Philly in May, and Pearl Jam and all these things that are gone, let alone opening day and the Preakness and all of these other things. But I literally, every time I've parked the car to get groceries over the last 6 months, I've thought, I'm going to stop in and see Dave. And you know what I think? Dave's busy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go in there and bug him right now, And so I haven't come in and elbow bumped you, but I apologize for that because we have been very close physically, but I haven't even come in and given you like the fist bump, and now I can't. So I apologize for that.
Well, the first opportunity, I'll be happy no matter what I'm doing to give you an elbow bump and a fist bump if we're allowed by protocol at that time. But no, it's been great to chat with you and enjoyed listening to this and wish you the best and appreciate the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you this morning.
All right, wash your hands, stay clean, so we all get together again sometime soon. All right, appreciate you.
Stay well.
David Noel joining us here, President, CEO of Maryland Office Interiors, MOII. They create sexy spaces. I don't think they have a purple magma lamp, though, the way my sporticulture friends do. I don't know if this would be approved at MOI, but certainly this chair would, my office space, and I'm always taught by making my place a little bit more, me, like my jacket is today. I've shaved up. This is my freedom patch. I'm leaving in here for everybody, just in case you're wondering. I don't know. I might get rid of it next week. I've been changing my mind about all things except my hairstyle. One day I'm going to cut it. One day I'm not. This week I'm going to dress up and feel like I'm going to work. I think it's making the programming better. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are WNST.net AM 1570. We used to do Baltimore sports, but we're still doing it this week because they're drafting football players. So make sure you're checking that out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault, as well as texting you all of the picks as they're coming down. You get on the WNST tech service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos has been with us all week long. Greg Cosell, Brian Billick, amongst others, joining us here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, and Baltimore Positive. We never stop talking. Baltimore Positive and Baltimore sports sometimes.